Hello, welcome to episode 1 of Adulting Unlocked. Today we welcome my dad, Ryan, to the podcast. He's going to be
Hi.
answering some questions about finances and budgeting to help you all get started on your journey into adulthood. So let's dive right in. Dad, can you share a bit about your background and experience with personal finance and budgeting?
Sure. I think probably the most prominent thing to say is that your mom and I raised 5 kids on one income, which is something that's kind of rare nowadays. So, given the fact that we were on a military salary for 20 years and mom never had to work, we did very well for one another and our kids by budgeting and sticking to it, on a regular basis. So we came out of the Air Force with no debt, which was really nice. A lot of people can't say that. So my experience has just been from trying to keep our house running smoothly without going into debt, and we were able to do that successfully. So.
Perfect. Yeah. So that kind of leads me into my next question, which you spoke on a little bit, but why exactly is it so crucial for people to manage their finances effectively?
Well, I mean, the big end goal is to stay out of debt, but if they don't manage their financial portfolio, if you will, effectively, then they're going to go into debt, and it's just going to dig them deeper and deeper into debt, which takes a toll on you. I mean, stress levels, everything else, but realistically, it can just lead to more problems down the road when you're trying to get a car or house or something like that, or just do anything. If you're constantly, piling yourself in deeper and deeper into debt, it's going to make it harder for you to have a financial future in anything that you try to do.
Yeah. And you and mom were really great with just instilling the financial responsibilities onto me. And I think that's most prominent with my car and my car payments. Um, I know that our original budget was around 10K for my car, and we stretched it a little bit by adding another 5K, but it all worked out, and I was very, very lucky to have no interest being accumulated on my car notes. But I think if I had stretched my budget anymore on my car and got the car that I had wanted instead of what you thought was best for me, um, I think that would have been a mistake. And I'm glad that I have the car that I have now because it's right in my budget where I am in life at the moment. I might have been able to afford something that was a little bit more expensive when I was still living with you guys. But now that I'm off on my own and I have, rent, groceries, stuff like that, I think it would have been something that would be really difficult to manage if my car payment had been any more than it is now. Um,
Well, it's just about living within your means, and that was something that we tried to find the best vehicle within your means, and that's I think something that mom and I've always tried to do is living within your means, and that's part of budgeting. So.
yeah. So what are some examples of people like not living within their means, and what are some examples that people like mistakes that they can make with their finances and budgeting?
Um, well, I'd say some of the pitfalls to not staying within your budget and living within your means is one that we've always done is, I mean, end of the week, everybody's lazy. They don't want to cook or do anything, and eating out can be very, very um, easy to agree to when nobody's feeling like cooking. But it also is a slippery slope because if you decide to go out, sometimes you don't budget for fast food. You just think, oh, it's the cheaper alternative. When in reality, I mean, it's very expensive when you compare it to budget shopping and meal planning and stuff like that. But not living within your means is it's easy to slip up on if you don't stick to it. And I think that I'm sorry, I screwed this one up. What was the question?
So, how can people set
The end of the week. It's Friday. I want fast food.
I do too, I just did like I told you earlier today, I just did all of my grocery shopping for the next couple weeks at, like, 2 a.m. this morning because I got tired of eating out and doing fast food, and with, you know, full-time school and full-time work, I get home late and I don't wanna cook by the time I get home, and then, my boyfriend Brady, he works hard labor, like, blue collar kinda job, so when he gets home, he doesn't ever wanna cook, and I think our fallback most of this month has been fast food, and
Yeah.
I guarantee that if I went and looked at my expense tracker, um, our fast food bill for the whole month is going to total to a lot more than I spent on groceries last night. And these
Yeah. And what you budgeted for, right?
Yeah, yeah, so that's kind of
Yeah.
where I fall short with my budgeting is, like you said, not really accounting for, like, the fast food and stuff, and not setting aside a budget for fast food, um, which is some advice that you could give people out there is how they can set realistic and achievable financing goals.
So setting realistic and achievable financial goals is, I don't know if I ever had goals. It was just live within our means. But one of the things that I always tried to stick to with mom was we looked at like necessities, and when we talk about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, um, you need food, you need shelter, and you start with the things that you absolutely need first when you're doing a budget. So, if you have a house payment, car payment, things like that, you set those first. Your budget, you have to budget for those items first. Um, but along with that comes food, and that's a hard one sometimes because when you're first starting out, you might not know how much you need for food. So meal planning is a big piece of that. Not to get too off topic, but if you're going to be successful, you have to like not just set a bunch of random numbers. You want to make sure that you're understanding like what you need. So meal planning for mom and I always that went into it when we first started shopping for our family. It was like we're just going to go to this grocery store and we're just going to try to figure out on the spot what we need. And you go up and down each aisle trying to figure out, oh, well, I can make something with this, or I can make something with that, or maybe we could do this. And that's on a Saturday or Sunday, you're grocery shopping. And by Wednesday, you don't remember what you were planning. And then you're trying to figure out what you're eating. And then you're eating fast food again. So what we did is we started to plan meals and, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, what that was going to look like. And then you make a list off of ingredients that you need. And then you go to the grocery store and only buy those things.
Yeah.
And sticking to that and being, very cognizant of what you need is absolutely paramount because when you're done with the grocery shopping trip, you look and you go, okay, I spent $100, 200, 300, 400, whatever it was. And after about a month, if you're doing that once a week, doing the meal planning for the week, going grocery shopping for what you need, then after a month, you should have a general idea of what your monthly budget should be for your food. Like fast food, you don't account for that because you go and you're buying again on the spot. You never go to the grocery store hungry because you want to buy everything that you see. It's just like going to Taco Bell hungry, you're going to buy everything that you want.
Yeah.
And you didn't account for that in your budget. But you can put a buffer in there if your finances allow, if you're bringing in enough to be able to do that. But if not, like we weren't able to, you just budget however much you have looked at over the last month or two, what you spend groceries weekly, multiply it by 4, however many weeks. And that's your budget. And then you start adding in those other important things that I mentioned, your bills, like your house payment, your rent, your car payment, your utilities and things like that. And you can do a not median income, I'm sorry, a generalized consensus of what your utilities might be. And I always overestimated. So if I knew that at most in the summertime my electric bill was $200 or whatever the case may be, then I'm going to put that for every month. And I want to overinflate because then when it comes under, I have a little bit of a buffer there. So don't just guesstimate. Take historical data. If you don't have it, try to look and see what the norm for your neighborhood might be, and some of that information you can find online. But the general idea is that you're realistically setting up. You're not guesstimating. You're trying to get the information you need to figure out how much you're going to spend each month, and you start with the things that you have to spend on.
Yeah.
Then when you're all done, then you can look at the extras, things like
Yeah.
that. So but I hope that kind of answers the question without going too far off in left field.
Yeah. I mean, I was just telling Brady the other day because, the end of the month is coming up. So we just got our utility bill and then our electric bill. And
Hmm.
I was telling him, like, earlier this month, like, oh, I'm so excited, our electric bill's gonna drop because it's, like, decently cold outside for Texas.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but then I went and looked at our utility bill, and with how our utility bill is set up, some months
Hmm.
they only charge us for gas, and then other months they charge us double gas, double sewage, double trash. And
Hmm.
on the months that the um, bill is like doubled up, it kind of evens out from when it's summertime and our electric bill is sitting close to like $200 a month. So,
Yeah.
like, overestimating in your budget is something that we definitely do, or at least I do, because like some months our electric bill could be, you know, less than other months, but then other bills can end up being more. So having that,
Yeah. I always went with the most expensive month. It just makes more sense that way.
yeah,
You go with the cheapest month, and it's $50 and you're like, yay, it was only $50. So I'm going to budget $50 for my electric or my water. And then that month that it's like skyrocketed, you're out of money. You've kind of screwed yourself into a corner. So,
yeah, and then you kind of like fall short on other bills, or you might not have enough for groceries, and then you fall down the rabbit hole of, okay, well, I can buy groceries on my credit card this month.
yeah,
And
you don't want to do that if you can help it.
credit cards are a slippery slope, and with that, like, debt can be a huge challenge, and credit cards can be a huge challenge for some people because they don't necessarily register that they're going to have to pay off the money that they put on their card. They're like
Hmm.
in the mindset like, "Oh, I don't have to buy this right now." Like, me putting it on my credit card is me buying it later. Um which causes, like I said, a slippery slope. So, what kind of strategies do you recommend, um, just with like managing and keeping credit card debt down while, of course, still maintaining your overall budget?
So, mom and I never had credit cards in the beginning. Like we didn't. It was just one of those things. In fact, some of the best piece of advice that I received from my parents was if you don't have the cash to pay for it, then don't buy it. And that was very hard in the beginning because everybody we knew was getting a credit card. Especially so easy when you're in the military. It's like, oh yeah, well you've got steady salary income, and they know it. And so credit card companies will offer you credit cards and stuff, but we just didn't do it. What we ended up doing was budgeting and saving, and sometimes it took us a year to save up, a couple $100 so that we could go buy something that we needed, which is not fun. We slept on a futon for the first couple of years until we could save up for a mattress, and a box spring and a actual bed,
Yeah.
which sucked, but it was what it was. And credit cards, like, it wasn't until later that we were like, well, we'll get one for emergencies. So my recommendation is don't get a credit card unless you absolutely need to have it for emergencies or something like that. Because what you're doing is you're spending money that you don't have yet, and it's easy to do that when you don't have it in your pocket. If you were really good back in the day and you could budget like spending with cash, right? Before debit cards and credit cards. Not that I'm that old, but we just we just learned in our youth that instead of swiping a card, it was better to like, hey, if you got $800 a month, which was not a lot, but believe it or not, that's what we got back then. And you knew that you couldn't go over $200 a week. You had $200 in your pocket per week, and as you saw that money leaving your hands, it was that reminder of, hey, I need to make sure I'm sticking to a budget, and that's just tactics. But it's no different than today. And what we're talking about is credit cards. It's like it's so easy to just swipe, swipe, swipe. And nowadays with PayPal and Venmo and all these different, Cash App and stuff, like you can just click everything,
Yeah.
Amazon and these apps and stuff. It's like, oh, it's so easy. Just click this one click button and it's instantly like, and then you're not ever seeing a transaction. You're not ever even seeing a cashier. You're not swiping. Sometimes you don't even see the amount. It's so quick,
Yeah, and just
and the next thing you know, you've racked up debt on a credit card or an account or something, and you're like, oh crap! At the end of the month, you have 100,000 whatever dollars that you're just like, oh, how did this happen?
yeah.
So that's a pitfall that I say avoid is credit cards. Don't do it. Try to disassociate yourself with apps and connecting cards and things to apps if you can help
Yeah,
it.
and from like an ADHD kind of standpoint, everyone always kind of says like out of sight, out of mind. And I
Hmm.
think having like the tap to pay and stuff as opposed to physical cash, like it's not really clicking in your brain that you're spending money. And
Yeah.
like you had just given me advice not too long ago because I wanted couches. I found some nice, decently priced recliners at Living Spaces, and I was like, "Oh, well, I have good credit. They have a 0% interest credit card. I could just
Hmm.
finance them, and then I can get couches finally." Because we've been in the rental home for like a year now with a single recliner and then that dinky little green couch that I picked up from Goodwill for $30 that seats
Yeah.
maybe a person and a half. But I'm glad that I took your advice and like I didn't finance the couches because Brady just went and picked up his mom's like really nice sectional for free. And that's
Yeah.
like almost $1,000 that I was ready and willing to spend. But now I'm looking back and I'm like, man, I'm so, so glad that I didn't do that and I didn't let that $1,000 just out the window.
A lot of times the decisions that we make for things like that they're emotional. You know what I mean? They're not. You're not thinking logistically. You're not thinking um, clearly. You're making your decisions on what you want. Wants are emotional. Needs are a necessity. They're you're not thinking rationally. And so I've always honestly it's like exercise. It takes a while to develop that routine, but once you do, it's a lot easier. And especially being a younger person with a family when we were in the military, it was like you see all these single folks around you that don't have kids yet, they're not married, and they're getting the same paycheck you are, but they've got like nice car or they've got nice things, and then you realize that they're in debt or they're blowing through everything or whatever the case may be. And it's like that old saying, keeping up with the Joneses. It's like you see all these things and you want it too, but if you want to have a good secure financial future, then you have to kind of you have to be responsible. You have to kind of say, hey, I'm going to hold off on this, and the urge goes away. It's like wanting chocolate in the evening. You wait long enough, it goes away.
Yeah. And
So
kind of just to touch on like there being single families in the military getting the same pay that you and mom did with 5 kids.
yeah.
Seeing them like go out and spend do you think that, like, sometimes stuff happened in their lives, like an unplanned pregnancy where, you know, they weren't really expecting the change in that financial responsibility? Um, how can people just overall, like, prepare for unexpected financial changes to their budgets?
Mm. Well, I think you bring up the point of unplanned pregnancy. I don't know if anybody's ever ready for that. It's one of those things that like that's people don't save up for hundreds and it used to be hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars, and then it was 10,000 or tens of thousands of dollars, and I don't even know. Like we were blessed because the military covers that kind of thing, but what you're talking about is emergency situations, I think, and
Mhm.
unplanned financial expenses.
Yeah.
We couldn't really build up, like we had very little wiggle room for unplanned expenses
Mhm.
and emergencies, and so that was a whole nother ball game. Like I said, people were driving cars, like new cars, nice cars, things like that, but nice and new doesn't always mean that they're reliable. So I saved money by learning to do maintenance on my own vehicles. I only kept like the most reliable vehicle that I could find, and I kept it in good working order. But unplanned things happen, and sometimes you get a tire blowout and you got to replace it. That hurts. So whenever possible, if you can budget, no matter how small, for an emergency fund, that's always good. It's part of the budget that you should try to do even before things like eating out, going to the movies and stuff like that. And sometimes when you're strapped for cash and you're living paycheck to paycheck, which we did for a long time,
Yeah.
you have to go without those things, and you find other things to fill your time with that are inexpensive. But when you can try to put a little bit of money away for unplanned things, in the long run, you'll be thankful that you did. If you can, gosh, I don't want to share how much we had in our bank account, but it was like triple digits for a very, very long time. That was our emergency fund.
Yeah.
So we never even had $1,000 to our name. But saving up a couple $100 so that when you needed a tow because your car broke down or you needed a new tire or set of tires, it helped. So in today's society, obviously it's a little bit different. A set of tires doesn't cost $400; it's $1,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you can save that over the course of a year or 2 years, you'll be thankful for it later on. So my advice would be is no matter how small, even if it's $1 a month or $5 a month or whatever you can afford, try to put money away in an emergency fund that you don't ever touch unless it's an emergency.
Yeah. Brady and I don't think I told you this, but Brady and I actually started doing that. Um, just like spare cash that we had on hand.
Hmm.
I forget where I was working at the time. Oh, I was working as the personal assistant for the tattoo
Hmm.
artist. Here
Yeah.
and there she'd throw me like a 20 or a 10 for gas for going and picking up food and stuff.
Yeah.
But Brady and I just started like throwing our spare cash into a legitimate piggy bank. Um,
Yeah.
and I think we have, I want to say around 400 in there.
You don't need to share that.
But I mean, like in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much. But if I ever have anything happen with my car where I can't fix it myself or you can't fix it, and I have to spend, X amount of money to get it fixed, or if Brady has something happen to his car, like we
Yeah.
have this emergency fund set aside, hidden in you know, somewhere in our house. And
Yeah.
it's, out of sight, out of mind. So we don't even think about it. And then just here and there, we add more money to it and more money. And,
Yeah.
hopefully at some point we'll put it into a joint savings account. But who knows?
Yeah.
But as we are going to wrap this up, what final piece of advice or encouragement would you like to give our listeners on finances and budgeting?
I mean, I'll give you the same advice my parents gave me, and if you can do it, it's great. I know not everybody can, but stay away from credit cards for as long as possible. Try to save up money in the for like before you need to buy something, whether that's through an emergency fund or like my parents told me, don't buy anything unless you have the cash to pay for it. And we're not talking like cars and houses and stuff like that, but things around the house that you'd like to. Well, I need a new couch or something. Yeah, save up for it. $100 a month if you can afford that for the next year. $1,200. And that should be able to buy a decent sofa or something.
Yeah.
But that would be my advice. And then when you're making a budget, remember to start with the necessities first. Obviously, you don't want to start with, oh, well, I need to set aside, money and budget for the movies and eating out. Start with your rent, start with your bills, start with your food. Those are the most important. But it's just about making that budget and then sticking to it are probably the most important things. So that's about it.
Okay. Thank you so much for answering my plethora of questions and for joining me on my first episode of the Adulting Unlocked podcast. I hope this
You're very
episode
welcome.
has been helpful to all of our viewers with just managing their budget and their spending habits. But thank you again for joining me today, and I will see you all next week for our next episode. Thanks.